parents set up a GoFundMe the day my brother died, then milked our entire community for every last cent. So I finally exposed them and made sure everybody knew their darkest secrets. My parents made $45,000 off my brother's death in 48 hours. I was in the basketball stands finishing my chemistry homework when I saw it. Coach Miller pumping my brother Archie's chest, counting the compressions out loud. He didn't make it. Undiagnosed heart condition, they said. That evening, I walked into my parents' room expecting to find mom just as destroyed as me, maybe clutching Archie's baby photos. Instead, I found her setting up a GoFundMe. The goal was $10,000. Within 48 hours, we had $45,000. You'd think they'd close it after that, right? But grief does strange things to people. Or maybe it just reveals who they really were all along. Because instead of closing it, my mom updated the description. Overwhelmed by grief and unexpected bills. Dad checked the donation fund any chance he got, his thumb aggressively refreshing every time. I thought they were just distracting themselves, that it would hit them eventually. But 3 days after the funeral, my mom made me delete every happy photo on social media taken before Archie died. Said it was disrespectful to his memory. By month 2, they launched a new fundraiser for grief counseling. I never saw them go to a single session. That's when everything changed. We'd been living in this crappy 2-bedroom apartment with mold on the walls when suddenly my parents came in celebrating because they had just bought a house. It was in a nicer neighborhood, clean, and 3 bedrooms. I knew deep down what they were doing was wrong, but I didn't care because the grief was so painful that I couldn't think about anything else for longer than 10 minutes without breaking down. And unfortunately, none of my friends wanted to listen to me. So that's when I did something extremely insane. I tried to talk about it with my family. We were eating chicken Caesar salad for dinner when I said it. Remember when Archie used to steal my croutons? You need to let go of what you can't control, my mom snapped, slamming her wine glass down on the table. Archie is taking care of us and that's all that matters. Think of it as a gift. Her voice was sharp enough to make me think that she was right and I was wrong. So I smiled for every fundraiser photo they took. I followed my mom's lead at every charity gala. I kept all my grief for my 2 a.m. showers. It was the only place I was free to curl up into a ball and cry as much as I wanted. Sometimes to cheer myself up, I'd practice me and Archie's handshake in the dark. It always made me smile. Then came the day I finally fought back. March 1st, the date of me and Archie's tradition. We'd bike 10 miles to our favorite homemade ice cream parlor and eat it by the beach. It was small, but it mattered to me. It landed on the same day as my parents' spring fundraiser gala. But I figured it wasn't a big deal because I could go to both, right? Well, as soon as I brought it up, my mom's face went red. You'd rather play in dirt than support your family, she shouted. She was already in her new black dress. The price tag was tucked in, but I saw it. $400. The Richardsons donated $10,000 specifically to meet you, my dad chimed in. It was clear they weren't giving me a choice, but for the first time since Archie died, something in me snapped. Archie would hate to see what you've become, I said, voice shaking. The silence lingered for a few seconds. My mom didn't say anything, just walked towards me, grabbed my phone, and threw it against the wall. If you won't honor your brother properly, she said, handing back the crushed phone, you don't deserve these memories. 2 years of camera roll memories disappeared with one toss. The grief hit me all over again. It was like I had just found out Archie died for the first time. As I collapsed onto the wooden floor, unable to move, they turned off the lights and went to bed. Eventually, I stood up again to go and cry in the shower, but as I did, I stopped right outside the closet, the one filled with trash bags of old things, including Archie's belongings, and for the first time since we moved, I opened it. His scent immediately filled my nostrils, and my eyes filled with tears. At the top of all his clothes, there was a receipt for a pharmacy prescription. I googled it on the family iPad. It was for Adderall, the highest dose, bought the day before Archie died. Under normal circumstances, this would have been fine, except no one in the house had ADHD, and the more I researched, the more Archie's death made sense, because it's known for causing heart attacks in athletes. My blood went cold. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. The pharmacy receipt crinkled in my grip while I scrolled through article after article about Adderall and sudden cardiac death in athletes. Each word made my stomach twist tighter. Archie never had ADH. None of us did. Footsteps creaked overhead. My parents were awake. I shoved the receipt into my pocket and quickly closed Archie's closet door. The iPad screen went dark just as Mom appeared at the top of the stairs, her silk nightgown flowing behind her like a shadow. She squinted down at me through the darkness. Her eyes narrowed when she noticed where I was standing. The closet door hadn't fully latched. I grabbed a tissue box from the hallway table and held it up, forcing my voice to stay steady. My nose was still stuffy from crying, which helped sell the lie. Mom's gaze flicked from my face to the closet door, then back again. She didn't move for what felt like forever. Finally, she turned and disappeared into her bedroom without a word. I waited until I heard their door click shut before exhaling. The tissue box shook in my hands as I made my way back to my room. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, I lay there replaying every moment from Archie's last weeks, searching for signs I'd missed. The next morning, Mom hummed while scrambling eggs. She'd already showered and styled her hair, wearing the designer jeans she'd bought last week. Dad sat at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone, probably checking donation numbers again. I slid into my usual chair and reached for the orange juice. Mom set a plate in front of me with that practiced smile she wore for donors. She mentioned it so casually, like she was talking about the weather. Today she'd be donating Archie's things to charity. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. She watched me carefully, studying my reaction like she was conducting an experiment. I forced myself to take a bite of eggs. They tasted like cardboard. Mom's smile widened when I didn't protest. She turned back to the stove, but I caught her reflection in the microwave door. She was still watching me. After breakfast, I grabbed my backpack and headed for the door. Mom called out that she'd be at the country club later for a donor lunch. Dad would join her. They'd be gone at least 2 hours. The walk to CVS took 15 minutes. I'd chosen the one 3 blocks from school instead of the closer location. Less chance of running into anyone I knew. The automatic doors whooshed open, and I stepped into the fluorescent brightness. I wandered the aisles slowly, pretending to browse shampoo bottles while actually studying the pharmacy area. Security cameras hung from 2 corners. The pharmacy counter had a clear view of the consultation window. Behind it, shelves of white bottles stretched to the ceiling. The pharmacy tech organizing prescriptions looked familiar. When she turned, I recognized her immediately. Jake's older sister, the one who'd graduated 2 years ago. She caught me staring and waved. I waved back and quickly moved to the candy aisle. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom asking if I needed anything from the store. I typed back that I was fine, then deleted the message and retyped it with a heart emoji. She liked when I used those. Jake's sister appeared at the end of my aisle, restocking cough drops. She glanced around before leaning closer. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper as she mentioned that weird stuff happened at this pharmacy sometimes. Prescriptions that didn't match medical records. steroids, pills that went missing. She'd only been working there 6 months but had already seen enough to make her suspicious. Before I could ask more, her manager called her back to the counter. She gave me a meaningful look before walking away. I bought a pack of gum and left, my mind racing with new questions. Back home, Mom's car was gone, so was Dad's. I had my window. Their bedroom door was locked, but I'd learned to pick it years ago when Archie and I played spy games. The bobby pin from my hair worked perfectly. Inside, everything was pristine. Mom's jewelry box sat on the dresser next to Dad's cologne collection. Their walk-in closet held more new clothes than I'd realized. I started with the dresser drawers. Nothing. The nightstands held only books and phone chargers. Under the bed, just dust bunnies. I was about to give up when I noticed the heating vent cover was slightly crooked. My fingers fumbled with the screws. Behind the vent, wedged between 2 pipes, was a manila folder. My hands shook as I pulled it free. Archie's name was written on the tab in Mom's neat handwriting. Inside were medical records I'd never seen. An anxiety diagnosis dated 1 month before he died. Prescription records for various medications, all from different doctors. 3 different clinics across 2 counties. Mom's handwritten notes were clipped to several pages. One prescription for vitamins had a note in the margin. Anxiety supplements, increase as needed. The vitamins were Adderall. Different doses from different doctors, all prescribed within the same 2-week period. My vision blurred as I photographed each page with my phone. A car door slammed outside. Dad's BMW was pulling into the driveway 2 hours early. I shoved the folder back behind the vent and twisted the screws frantically. They were walking up the front path. The last screw went in just as I heard keys in the front door. I sprinted to the bathroom and locked myself in, turning on the shower for cover. Through the door, I heard Dad's voice, clear and suspicious. He told Mom the closet door had been open when they left. My phone location showed I'd been in their bedroom. They were tracking me. Mom's heels clicked down the hallway. She knocked on the bathroom door, asking if I was okay. I called back that I felt sick, probably something I ate. She paused, then said to let her know if I needed anything. Her footsteps faded. I sat on the bathroom floor, still fully dressed while the shower ran. The photos on my phone were evidence, but of what exactly? That my parents had doctor shopped for Adderall prescriptions? That they'd given them to Archie as vitamins? The pieces were falling into place, but I needed more. Archie's fitness app. He'd been obsessed with tracking his workouts and heart rate. If he'd been taking Adderall, the app would show changes in his vitals. I still remembered his password, our birthday combined with his jersey number, but I'd need privacy to check it, and now I knew they were monitoring my phone location. Every move I made would be watched. My phone buzzed. A text from Mia, my best friend since 3rd grade. Her message made my blood run cold. My parents had called her mom. They were concerned about my troubling behavior and wanted to make sure I wasn't spreading harmful delusions about Archie's death. The shower was getting cold. I turned it off and actually changed into pajamas to sell the sick story. When I emerged, Mom was waiting in the hallway with a cup of tea and that same donor smile. She handed me the tea and smoothed my hair back from my forehead, checking for fever. Her touch felt like ice. As she fussed over me, I noticed Dad in their bedroom, carefully adjusting the heating vent cover I'd barely managed to screw back in place. They knew. They both knew. But they didn't know about the photos auto-backing up to my Google account. They didn't know about Jake's sister at the pharmacy. They didn't know that Aunt Linda, Mom's sister who'd been avoiding family gatherings since Archie died, had pulled me aside at the funeral and whispered that something wasn't right. I sipped the tea and thanked Mom for taking care of me. Let them think they were winning. Let them believe their tracking and monitoring had me trapped. Because tomorrow at school, I'd use the library computers. I'd reach out to Sarah, Archie's girlfriend, who'd been asking questions about that morning. I'd talk to Jake about what Archie had told him. I'd build my case piece by piece, ally by ally. They'd turned Archie's death into a business. They'd fed him pills that stopped his heart and then profited from the grief. But they'd made one mistake. They'd left me alive to figure it out. The next morning brought a new development. Mom announced over breakfast that she'd arranged for me to switch to online schooling. For my mental health, she explained, spreading butter on her toast with practiced calm. Dad nodded along, mentioning how the principal agreed it would be best after yesterday's incident. I hadn't been to school yesterday. The lie sat between us like a loaded weapon. I pushed scrambled eggs around my plate and agreed it might help. Mom's shoulders relaxed slightly. She'd expected a fight. Instead, I gave her exactly what she wanted, compliance. Let her think she'd won this round. After they left for another donor meeting, I slipped out the back door. The school library computers were my only chance at privacy now. I'd memorized the bus schedule last night, planning each step while they slept. At school, I signed in as a visitor, claiming I needed to return library books. The secretary barely glanced up. In the computer lab, I logged into Archie's fitness app using the credentials I'd memorized. His data loaded slowly, each second stretching like an eternity. The heart rate patterns made my stomach drop. Normal readings for months, then sudden spikes starting 6 weeks before he died. Resting heart rate jumping from 65 to 95. Workout sessions showing dangerous peaks of 180 plus. Notes in the app mentioned feeling dizzy, chest tightness, trouble sleeping. I screenshot everything and emailed copies to 3 different accounts. Then I searched for Sarah's contact information in the school directory. Her last name was Chen, and she lived 2 neighborhoods over. I memorized her address before clearing the browser history. Movement in the hallway caught my eye. Mom stood at the library entrance, scanning the room. I ducked behind a bookshelf, heart pounding. She spoke with the librarian, who pointed toward the computer area. I slipped out through the back exit while Mom's back was turned. The walk to Sarah's house took 40 minutes. I kept to side streets, avoiding main roads where Mom might drive past. Sarah answered the door still in her soccer uniform, eyes widening when she saw me. We sat on her back porch while I explained everything. The prescriptions, the fitness app data, the way Mom had been watching me. Sarah listened without interrupting, her face growing paler with each detail. When I finished, she pulled out her phone and showed me saved text messages from Archie. The messages documented everything. Complaints about the vitamins making him jittery. Mom threatening to pull him from the travel team if he didn't take them. Dad backing her up, saying it was for his anxiety. One message from the night before he died simply read, "I can't do this anymore. My chest hurts all the time." Sarah had kept quiet out of respect for my family's grief, but she'd been carrying this weight for months, wondering if she could have saved him. We hugged on her porch, both crying for the boy we'd lost and the truth we'd uncovered. Her mom found us there 20 minutes later. Sarah's mom had always been kind to me, bringing orange slices to Archie's games and cheering louder than anyone. She took one look at our faces and invited me inside. Over green tea, I told the story again. Sarah's mom listened carefully, occasionally exchanging glances with her daughter. When I showed her the photos of the prescriptions, her jaw tightened. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital and recognized the dosages immediately. She made some calls while Sarah and I sat in tense silence. 20 minutes later, she had confirmed what we suspected. The doses prescribed would have been dangerous for anyone, but especially for an athlete with Archie's training schedule. The combination of of stimulants and intense physical activity was a recipe for disaster. Sarah's mom offered to let me stay with them, but I knew that would only escalate things. Instead, she gave me her cell number and made me promise to call if I felt unsafe. She also mentioned that several other parents had been asking questions about the fundraisers. I walked home slowly, processing everything. The house was empty when I arrived, but evidence of mom's search was everywhere. My room had been ransacked, drawers pulled out, and belongings scattered. Even my mattress was askew, like she'd been looking for hidden evidence. I straightened everything methodically, making mental notes of what had been touched. My old laptop was missing, along with several notebooks. She'd even taken my yearbook, probably looking for notes or messages from Archie. The home phone rang. Mia's voice was strained when I answered. Her mom had forbidden her from talking to me, but she'd snuck a call from her bathroom. My parents had visited again, this time with printouts of my concerning behavior. They'd painted me as delusional with grief, possibly dangerous to myself and others. Mia didn't believe them, but her mom did. She'd been friends with my mom since their book club days, and couldn't imagine her capable of what I was suggesting. Mia promised to keep gathering information at school, but we'd have to be careful about contact. I hung up feeling more isolated than ever. Mom had been busy poisoning the well, turning potential allies against me before I could reach them, but she'd made one mistake. She'd focused on the parents, not the kids. That evening, dinner was a performance. Mom chatted about redecorating Archie's room, maybe turning it into an office. Dad mentioned meeting with a financial advisor about setting up a scholarship fund. They were already spending money they hadn't yet raised. I nodded along, even suggesting they use Archie's favorite color for the walls. Mom's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious of my cooperation, but I kept my expression neutral, playing the part of the grieving but healing daughter. After dinner, I helped clear the table without being asked. While loading the dishwasher, I heard them whispering in the living room. Dad was worried I was planning something. Mom assured him the online schooling would keep me contained. I retreated to my room early, claiming exhaustion. Through my door, I heard Mom on the phone with someone, mentioning that the situation was under control, and the spring gala would proceed as planned. The donations would be bigger than ever, she promised. I lay in bed, fully clothed, waiting. Around midnight, I heard their bedroom door close. I gave it another hour before creeping to the bathroom. Hidden behind the toilet tank, wrapped in plastic, was the burner phone Sarah's mom had slipped me during our hug goodbye. The phone already had several messages. Jake had reached out through Sarah, wanting to talk. 2 other teammates had stories about Archie's behavior in those final weeks. Coach Miller had been asking about me. The network was forming, despite Mom's efforts to isolate me. I typed careful responses, arranging to meet Jake at the park during tomorrow's donor lunch. His message back was immediate. Archie had confided in him about the pills, even showing him the bottle once. Jake had told him to talk to Coach Miller, but Archie was too scared of disappointing our parents. A soft knock on the bathroom door made me freeze. Dad's voice asked if I was okay. I flushed the toilet and hid the phone before opening the door. He stood there in his pajamas, looking older than I remembered. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt in his eyes. He asked if I needed anything. I shook my head, noting how he avoided direct eye contact. As he turned to leave, he paused. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, then closed again. He shuffled back to their bedroom without another word. Sleep came in fragments. I dreamed of Archie running on the court, his heart beating visibly through his jersey, each thump louder than the last until it stopped completely. I woke gasping, pillow soaked with tears. Morning brought new challenges. Mom announced she'd be working from home to keep me company during online school. She set up her laptop at the kitchen table, positioning herself with a clear view of my workspace. Every website I visited would be visible to her. I complied without complaint, logging into the school portal and beginning my assignments. But while she took calls with donors, I used the reflection in my laptop screen to watch her. She was monitoring my browser history on her phone, frowning when she saw only educational sites. During her bathroom break, I quickly opened a private browser and sent a coded message through the school portal to Sarah. It looked like a question about homework, but contained meeting coordinates for that afternoon. The response came back disguised as study notes. Lunch was tense. Mom had made Archie's favorite sandwich. Watching my reaction as she placed it in front of me, I ate mechanically, mentioning how nice it was to have his favorite foods around. Her smile was sharp as glass. She excused herself for a video call with major donors. I could hear her from the home office, spinning tales of our family's tragedy and resilience. She mentioned my struggles with grief, how the community support was helping us heal. Every word was calculated to maximize sympathy and donations. While she performed, I slipped outside to take out the trash. Jake was waiting by the recycling bins, having cut class to meet me. We had maybe 5 minutes before Mom noticed I was gone. He handed me a plastic bottle, the same kind Archie had shown him. The label was partially scratched off, but I could make out enough to confirm it matched the prescription I'd found. Jake explained that Archie had been taking 2 or 3 before each practice, sometimes more before games. The day Archie died, Jake saw him take 4 pills at once. He'd seemed agitated, complaining about pressure from Mom to perform well because scouts were watching. His hands had been shaking so badly he could barely tie his shoes. Jake's voice cracked as he admitted he should have told someone, but Archie had begged him not to, terrified of losing basketball, the only thing that made him happy anymore. I hugged Jake quickly, telling him it wasn't his fault. We were all just kids trying to protect each other from adults who should have protected us. A door slammed inside the house. I shoved the bottle in my pocket and rushed back, Jake disappearing around the corner. Mom stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. She'd been looking for me, she said. The trash didn't take that long. I apologized, saying I'd needed fresh air. She studied my face for signs of deception, but found only the exhaustion that had become my constant companion. She returned to her office, but I caught her checking the window locks afterward. That afternoon dragged endlessly. I completed assignments while Mom fielded calls about the gala. She was promising exclusive access to our family's story, chances to hear directly from Archie's grieving sister. I was being packaged and sold just like his memory. Around 3, she left for an in-person meeting with the venue coordinator. She reminded me that Dad would be home soon and that I should start dinner. The moment her car disappeared, I was moving. I grabbed the hidden phone and called Aunt Linda. She answered on the first ring, voice tight with worry. She'd been trying to reach me for days, but Mom had blocked her number. I gave her the abbreviated version of everything I'd discovered. Aunt Linda's silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then she told me something that changed everything. This wasn't the first time. When they were young, Mom had done something similar with their cousin who'd had epilepsy. Convinced the family that experimental treatments were needed, raised money, but the cousin's condition only worsened. The cousin survived, but barely. The family had covered it up, too ashamed to admit they'd been fooled. Aunt Linda had been young then, but she remembered Mom's calculating eyes as she counted the donations. She'd been waiting for something like this to happen again. She offered to come get me immediately, but I knew that would only give Mom ammunition. Instead, we made a plan. Aunt Linda would start reaching reaching out to family members, particularly those who remembered the cousin incident. She'd also contact some of Mom's former employers who'd had suspicions about missing funds. I heard Dad's car in the driveway and quickly ended the call. By the time he entered, I was chopping vegetables for dinner, the picture of domestic normalcy. He seemed relieved to find me cooking, even ruffling my hair like he used to when I was little. Over dinner prep, he talked about work, carefully avoiding any mention of Archie or the fundraisers. I played along, asking about his projects and laughing at his terrible jokes. For a moment, it felt like before. Then Mom came home, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. She interrogated Dad about his day while examining the house for anything out of place. Finding nothing, she joined us for dinner, dominating the conversation with gala planning. I volunteered to help with decorations, earning a surprised look from both parents. That night, I heard them arguing in hushed tones. Dad thought my cooperation was genuine healing. Mom insisted it was manipulation. She knew me better than that, she said. I was planning something. Dad's weak protests were quickly shut down. As always, Mom won. I spent the next morning in online classes while Mom worked beside me, but during lunch, she made a crucial error. She left her laptop open while taking a call in the other room. I could see her email inbox, full of correspondence about the gala. One subject line made my blood freeze. Increasing ACE supplements. Urgent. The sender was someone named Dr. Marcus. I couldn't read the full email, but I memorized the name and date. Another piece of evidence for my growing collection. Mom returned to find me exactly where she'd left me, eating a sandwich and reading history assignments. But her paranoia was growing. She started checking on me every few minutes, even following me to the bathroom once. The pressure was building towards something explosive. That afternoon brought an unexpected ally. Coach Miller showed up at our door, ignoring Mom's attempts to turn him away. He insisted on checking on me, his voice carrying enough authority that even Mom couldn't refuse entirely. She hovered as Coach Miller asked about my well-being. I gave appropriate responses while he studied my face. Then he mentioned that the team was retiring Archie's jersey number. The ceremony would be next week. He hoped our whole family would attend. Mom's face went through several expressions before settling on grateful sadness. Of course we'd be there. It was such a thoughtful gesture. Coach Miller nodded, but his eyes never left mine. He was giving me a public opportunity, a chance to be seen outside Mom's control. After he left, Mom was agitated. She made several phone calls, voice sharp with barely contained anger. The ceremony would interfere with gala preparations, but refusing would look suspicious. She was trapped by her own performance of grief. I used her distraction to text Sarah through the burner phone. The jersey retirement would be our chance to gather allies. Sarah immediately started coordinating with Jake and the others. We'd have one shot at breaking through Mom's narrative. The next few days blurred together. Mom tightened her control, even sleeping in a chair outside my room one night. But her focus on containing me meant she missed other threats. Aunt Linda was quietly building a case. Sarah's mom was documenting the dangerous prescriptions. Coach Miller was asking questions. 3 nights before the gala, everything accelerated. I woke to shouting downstairs. Mom had discovered that several major donors were pulling out. Someone had been calling them, sharing concerns about the fundraiser's legitimacy. She blamed me, of course, but I'd been under her watch constantly. Dad tried to calm her, but she was beyond reason. She threw a wine glass against the wall, screaming about ungrateful children and ruined plans. I stayed in my room, listening to her spiral. This was the real Mom, the one she'd hidden behind grief and designer clothes. The next morning, she was composed again, but something had shifted. She announced we were going on a family trip after the gala, just the 3 of us, to heal together. Dad looked uncomfortable but didn't argue. I recognized the trap. She was planning to run with the money. I had to accelerate my timeline. During her shower, I used Dad's phone to call Aunt Linda. She'd made progress but needed more time. I told her about the trip plans. She promised to have everything ready before the gala. Mom emerged to find me reading on the couch. She studied me like a specimen, looking for cracks in my facade. Finding none, she announced we'd be shopping for gala dresses that afternoon. A mother-daughter bonding experience, she called it. The shopping trip was surreal. Mom chatted with salespeople about our tragedy while I tried on expensive dresses. She selected a black one for me, appropriate for mourning, she said, but she chose bright red for herself. The grieving mother had mourned long enough. That evening, she modeled her dress for Dad. He complimented her while avoiding my eyes. I wondered if he truly didn't see what she was doing, or if he was just too weak to stop it. Either way, he was complicit in his silence. I excused myself early, claiming a headache. In my room, I updated Sarah and the others through the burner phone. The jersey ceremony was in 2 days. Everything had to be perfect. We'd only get one chance to expose the truth. Mom knocked on my door an hour later, entering without waiting for permission. She sat on my bed, smoothing my hair with cold fingers. She spoke about how proud Archie would be of our strength, how the scholarship fund would help so many young athletes. I agreed, even suggesting we name it after his favorite basketball move. Her smile was almost genuine then. For a moment, I saw the mother she could have been if greed hadn't poisoned her heart. Then she mentioned the trip again, how it would be good to get away from all the painful memories. She left me with a kiss on the forehead, her lipstick leaving a mark I immediately wiped away. Through my window, I watched her shadow pass by every half hour. She was checking on me, making sure I stayed put, but she didn't know about the phone hidden behind the toilet tank or the allies gathering in the darkness. The next morning brought final preparations. Mom supervised my online schooling while simultaneously coordinating gala details. She was stretched thin, her control slipping in small ways. She snapped at Dad over breakfast, forgot to check my browser history, left her phone unattended for nearly 10 minutes. I used every opportunity to gather information. Screenshots of her emails, photos of donation records left on the counter, recordings of her phone calls made while she thought I was in the shower. Each piece added to the damning whole. That afternoon, she made me try on the black dress again. Standing in front of the mirror, I looked like a ghost of myself. She adjusted the hem, talking about how the donors would be so moved by my presence. I was a prop in her performance, nothing more. But I smiled and thanked her for thinking of everything. Let her believe she'd broken me, molded me into the grieving daughter she needed. In less than 48 hours, she'd learn how wrong she was. That night, I lay awake listening to her pace the hallway. The stress was getting to her. Good. Let her feel a fraction of the fear Archie must have felt, his heart racing from pills he was forced to take. Let her wonder if her carefully constructed world was about to collapse, because tomorrow was the jersey ceremony, and the day after that was her gala. But she didn't know about the evidence compiled on multiple servers. She didn't know about the witnesses ready to speak. She didn't know that her own sister was prepared to expose a pattern of exploitation spanning decades. Most importantly, she didn't know that I'd stopped being her victim the moment I found that receipt in Archie's closet. I'd been playing a longer game, gathering allies and evidence while she focused on controlling my movements. The reckoning was coming, and unlike Archie, I'd be ready for it. The jersey retirement ceremony arrived with threatening clouds overhead. I dressed carefully in Archie's old team hoodie, the one mom had somehow missed during her purges. She frowned when she saw it but couldn't object without breaking character in front of the gathering crowd. The gymnasium filled with teammates, parents, and community members. Mom positioned us in the front row, her hand gripping my shoulder like a vice. Dad sat on my other side, fidgeting with his phone. I spotted Sarah near the back with her mother. Jake stood with the team, eyes finding mine across the room. Coach Miller took the microphone and began speaking about Archie's dedication, his spirit, his love for the game. Mom's grip tightened with each word. When Coach mentioned how Archie had been struggling in his final weeks, how the team wished they'd done more to help, her nails dug into my skin. The ceremony proceeded with teammates sharing memories. Each story painted a picture Mom couldn't control. Archie exhausted at practice, hands shaking during free throws, complaining about headaches. The narrative was shifting without anyone directly accusing her. When they unveiled his jersey, number 23 in a glass case, I stood without warning. Mom tried to pull me back down, but I was already moving toward Coach Miller. He handed me the microphone without hesitation, as if we'd planned it. I spoke about my brother, not the sanitized version Mom had been selling, but the real Archie. How he'd loved stealing my croutons, how we'd had a secret handshake, how scared he'd been in those final weeks, though he'd tried to hide it. My voice stayed steady, even as tears rolled down my cheeks. The gymnasium was silent except for a few sniffles from the crowd. I mentioned how much Archie had wanted to make everyone proud, how he'd pushed himself beyond his limits, how sometimes the people who love us can hurt us without meaning to, or maybe while meaning to. Mom stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor, but Aunt Linda appeared from the side entrance, flanked by two of Mom's former co-workers. They took seats directly behind my parents, their presence a clear message. I finished by saying Archie deserved to be remembered for who he was, not what his death could profit. Then I returned the microphone and walked back to my seat. The applause started slowly, led by Jake and the team, spreading through the crowd until it thundered off the walls. Mom's face had gone pale beneath her makeup. She whispered something to Dad, who shook his head. For the first time, he wasn't immediately following her lead. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence, during which I felt the weight of dozens of eyes on our family. Afterward, people approached me instead of my parents. They shared their own concerns, things they'd noticed but hadn't wanted to voice. Coach Miller stood nearby like a guardian, preventing Mom from intervening. Sarah's mom invited several parents to coffee to discuss community support for young athletes. We drove home in suffocating silence. Mom's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Dad stared out the window. I sat in the back, feeling the burner phone buzz with messages of support. The tide had turned, and Mom knew it. At home, she exploded. Accusations flew. I'd ruined everything, destroyed Archie's memory, turned people against our family. Dad tried to calm her, but she rounded on him, screaming about his weakness, his failure to control me. I retreated to my room as they fought, louder than ever before. Through my door, I heard Dad's voice rise for the first time, telling her to stop, that maybe I was right, that maybe they needed to think about what they'd done. A door slammed. A car engine started. Mom was gone. Dad knocked on my door an hour later. He looked broken, older than his years. He sat on my bed and tried to explain how Mom had convinced him the supplements would help Archie's anxiety, how the money had seemed like silver lining to tragedy, how he'd been too weak to question her. I let him talk without responding. His confessions didn't absolve him, but they filled in gaps. Mom had been planning this for months before Archie died, researching his training schedule, calculating dosages. She'd known about the heart rhythm abnormality from a childhood physical. She'd known exactly what she was doing. He left my room carrying the weight of his complicity. I heard him on the phone with Aunt Linda, his voice cracking as he admitted truths he'd been hiding from himself. The gala was tomorrow, but the foundation was already crumbling. That night, I couldn't sleep. Mom hadn't returned. Dad had fallen asleep on the couch, empty beer bottles on the coffee table. I crept through the house, gathering final pieces of evidence. In Mom's office, I found draft press releases for after the gala, plans for a book deal, speaking engagements. She'd been planning to monetize grief for years to come. Morning arrived with Mom's car in the driveway. She entered like nothing had happened, humming while making coffee, but her hands shook as she poured. She announced we needed to prepare for the gala, that donors were expecting us in 6 hours. I agreed to get ready. She watched me suspiciously but had no choice. Canceling would confirm every doubt raised at the ceremony. I put on the black dress, let her style my hair, became the prop she needed one last time. The venue was elegant, decorated in Archie's team colors. Donors mingled with champagne glasses, unaware of the storm approaching. Mom worked the room with desperate energy, her smile too bright, her laugh too loud. Dad followed mechanically, dead-eyed. But something was wrong. The expected crowd hadn't materialized. Several major donors were absent. Those present seemed uncomfortable, checking phones, whispering in corners. Mom's carefully orchestrated performance was playing to a skeptical audience. Aunt Linda arrived with a small group, the parents from coffee, Coach Miller, Sarah's family. They took a table near the stage, their presence impossible to ignore. Mom's smile flickered but held. She had no choice but to continue. The program began with Mom taking the microphone. She spoke about loss, about community, about Archie's legacy, but her words rang hollow in the half-empty room. When she mentioned the scholarship fund, someone coughed. When she talked about healing, chairs scraped. Then Aunt Linda stood. Without raising her voice, she asked about the cousin from years ago, the one with epilepsy, the one whose treatment money had disappeared. Mom's face went white. She tried to deflect, but Aunt Linda continued. Dates, amounts, patterns. Other voices joined in. The former co-workers mentioned discrepancies at previous jobs. Parents asked about the multiple prescriptions, the different doctors. Coach Miller stood and simply said Archie had come to him the week before he died, scared and wanting help, but too afraid of disappointing his parents to accept it. Mom's mask finally shattered. She screamed at Aunt Linda, at the crowd, at me. Wild accusations flew. We were jealous, vindictive, trying to profit from her pain. But the room had turned. People were leaving, pulling out phones, canceling donation checks. Dad stepped away from her for the first time. He moved to stand with Aunt Linda, his choice clear. Mom stood alone at the microphone, her red dress garish under the lights, ranting at an emptying room. Security eventually escorted her out. She left screaming about lawsuits, revenge, how we'd all pay. But her power was broken. The money would be returned, the fundraisers investigated, the truth finally acknowledged. I sat at an empty table as the venue cleared, still wearing the black dress she'd chosen. Sarah and her mom sat with me, quiet support while I processed. Jake and the team stopped by, promising to keep Archie's real memory alive. Coach Miller squeezed my shoulder before leaving. Aunt Linda drove me home. Dad had already started packing Mom's things. He'd found more evidence, pills hidden throughout the house, forged prescriptions, research on dosing for maximum effect without immediate fatality. The full scope of her planning was staggering. Mom tried returning twice that night. The first time she begged through the door. She was still my mother. She loved me. Everything had been for the family. The second time brought threats. She'd take the house, destroy our reputations, make sure I never forgot what I'd done to her. Both times, we didn't answer. Aunt Linda had already started legal proceedings to become my guardian. Dad would move out, too broken by his complicity to pretend at parenting. The house would be sold, the profits donated to legitimate athlete safety programs. The next days blurred together. Mom disappeared after emptying what accounts she could access. Dad signed papers with shaking hands. I packed Archie's real belongings, not the sanitized versions Mom had curated, but his actual life, his lucky socks with holes, notes he'd passed in class, the bottle of cologne he'd saved for after winning state. A week later, I stood in an empty house with Aunt Linda. The furniture was gone, donated or sold, but in Archie's room, I'd left one thing, our team photo from his freshman year, before everything went wrong. His smile was real in that picture, unmarred by fear or pills or a mother's greed. Sarah's family helped me move to Aunt Linda's. It was smaller than the house blood money had bought, but it felt clean. That first night, I finally slept without nightmares, without wondering what Mom was planning, without fear of what morning would bring. Coach Miller invited me to speak at a team parent meeting about recognizing signs of prescription abuse in young athletes. I shared what I could bear to share, watching parents take notes, seeing them look at their children with new concern. It wasn't justice, but it was something. 3 months later, I returned to regular school. The whispers followed me at first, the girl whose parents called her brother for money. But Sarah and Jake and others formed a buffer, and eventually I was just another student again. Mom surfaced once, 6 months later. A letter with no return address, postmarked from another state. She blamed me for everything, said I'd destroyed our family out of jealousy. She hoped I was happy with my choices. I burned it without showing anyone. Dad sent birthday cards, Christmas money, guilty attempts at connection. I accepted them without response. He'd made his choices, enabled her plans, looked away when looking would have saved Archie. His weakness had been as deadly as her greed. On the anniversary of Archie's death, I visited his grave with our old team. We didn't bring flowers, he'd have thought that was silly. Instead, we brought a basketball, took turns shooting at the portable hoop someone had set up. Each basket was a memory, a story, the brother they'd actually known. That evening, I sat with Aunt Linda looking through photo albums she'd saved from when we were young, pictures from before Mom had turned poisonous, when we'd just been a normal family. Archie grinning with missing teeth, me on his shoulders at a parade, us covered in cake at someone's birthday. I kept one photo, Archie and me at the beach, eating ice cream from our favorite parlor, our tradition that I tried to honor the day everything changed. His face was sunburned and happy, chocolate sauce on his chin. I was laughing at something he'd said. That's how I chose to remember him. Not as a victim of our mother's greed or our father's weakness, not as a cautionary tale about prescription abuse, just as my brother who stole my croutons and had a terrible free throw percentage and gave the best hugs when I was sad. The scholarship fund in his name helped 3 kids attend basketball camp that summer. Small amounts, carefully managed by Coach Miller and a board of parents. No galas, no publicity, just quiet help for families who needed it. Archie would have liked that. I graduated 2 years later. Mom didn't come, obviously. Dad sent a card, but the stands were full of chosen family. Aunt Linda crying behind sunglasses, Sarah's family cheering too loud, Coach Miller looking proud, Jake and the team whooping when I walked across the stage. College applications asked about overcoming challenges. I wrote about learning that family isn't always blood, that strength sometimes means asking for help, that justice doesn't always come from courts. I didn't mention the headlines or the gossip, just the quiet work of rebuilding after betrayal. The acceptance letters came with financial aid, legitimate aid based on need and merit, not tragedy. I chose a school 6 hours away, far enough for fresh starts, but close enough for weekend visits home. Aunt Linda helped me pack, both of us crying as we folded clothes into boxes. My dorm room was small, shared with a girl who'd never heard of me or Archie or what had happened. She complained about her parents being overprotective, calling too much, sending care packages. I told her she was lucky and meant it. I kept Archie's team hoodie, worn now to threads. Sometimes I wore it to study in, feeling close to him in the quiet library hours. Other times it stayed folded in my drawer, too painful to touch. Grief wasn't linear, I learned. It came in waves, unexpected and overwhelming. The investigative report concluded a year after I left for college. Multiple prescription frauds documented, pattern of exploitation confirmed. Mom had vanished completely, warrants useless across state lines. Dad received probation, cooperation considered. The house money funded a permanent athletic safety program. I majored in public health, focused on adolescent wellness. Not because of what happened, I refused to let her choices dictate mine, but because I'd learned how systems could fail vulnerable people. My professors didn't know my history. I was just another student passionate about prevention. Junior year, I ran into one of Archie's old teammates at a conference. He'd gone into coaching, inspired by Miller's example. We talked about Archie over coffee, funny stories, good memories, the person he'd been beyond the tragedy. It felt like healing finally. Mom sent one final letter my senior year, longer, rambling, full of justifications and accusations. She'd remarried, she said, started over with someone who understood her. She hoped I'd learned my lesson about family loyalty. I kept that one, evidence of a narcissism that would never acknowledge truth. Graduation approached with bittersweet anticipation. Aunt Linda planned to come, along with the extended chosen family that had sustained me. I'd send Dad an invitation out of obligation, knowing he wouldn't show. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. My thesis advisor suggested I consider graduate school. I had the grades, the passion, the unique perspective, but I wanted to work first, to help directly, rather than theoretically. A position opened at a youth athletic program, teaching coaches about health monitoring. I applied immediately. The interview went well until they asked about handling difficult parents. I paused, then spoke honestly about understanding how parental pressure could harm young athletes, how sometimes love got twisted into dangerous control, how important it was to watch for signs others might miss. They offered me the job. I accepted, knowing Archie would approve. Not the grand gesture Mom would have orchestrated, but quiet work preventing other families' tragedies. I started 2 weeks after graduation, nervous but determined. The first parent who dismissed my concerns about their child's fatigue reminded me of Mom, so certain they knew best, so focused on scholarships and futures they couldn't see present harm. I documented everything, followed protocols, ensured other adults were watching. The child eventually got help, parents forced to confront their pushing. Each small victory felt like honoring Archie properly, not through galas or fundraisers or public performances of grief, but through mundane vigilance, watching for shaking hands, rapid heartbeats, exhausted kids afraid to disappoint, being the adult who would act when others might look away. 5 years after his death, I returned for a team reunion. The gym looked smaller than memory suggested. Coach Miller had retired but came anyway, grayer but still commanding respect. We gathered under Archie's jersey, sharing stories that had evolved into legend. Someone had brought the old team photo, the one I'd left in his grandmother's room. We recreated it. Gaps where Archie and another teammate lost to addiction should have stood. The camera captured us middle-aged and changed, but still connected by shared history and loss. That night, I drove past the old house. New family lived there now. Bikes in the driveway, different curtains and windows. They'd planted a garden where Mom had planned her pool. I didn't stop, just witnessed the transformation and drove on. Aunt Linda waited with tea and questions about the reunion. We talked until late, processing how far we'd come. She'd been my anchor through everything, proving family could be chosen and blood didn't guarantee loyalty. I'd been lucky to have her when everything else crumbled. The next morning brought work emails and normal life. I'd built something stable from ruins. Career, relationships, purpose beyond survival. Mom's shadow had faded to manageable proportions. Dad remained a complicated grief, but Archie stayed present in my choices, my vigilance, my refusal to let others suffer similarly. Sometimes donors recognized my name, connected dots, asked questions. I answered simply, yes, that was my brother. Yes, it was preventable. Yes, I worked now to help other families. No elaboration needed. The truth stood without embellishment. My apartment held few photos, but precious ones. Archie and me at the beach. The team reunion shot. Aunt Linda at my graduation. Sarah's wedding where I'd been bridesmaid. Life had continued despite everything. Fuller for having survived betrayal. Occasionally, usually late at night, I wondered where Mom was. If she'd found new victims or finally faced consequences. If she ever felt genuine remorse or remained convinced of her martyrdom. But mostly I didn't think of her at all, which felt like the greatest victory. I'd learned to mention Archie naturally in conversation. My brother who played basketball, who died young, who made me laugh. Not defining myself by tragedy, but incorporating loss into a fuller story. He deserved remembering beyond what killed him. The work continued, watching for signs, advocating for young athletes, teaching adults to see beyond ambition. Small acts that might prevent another family's destruction. Not redemption, because nothing could restore what was lost, but meaning carved from meaninglessness. 10 years after that night with the pharmacy receipt, I stood teaching a workshop on prescription abuse in youth sports. Parents took notes, asked questions, some crying as they recognized patterns. I spoke with hard-won authority about pressure and pills and the price of willful blindness. After, a mother approached privately. Her son, she said, had been struggling. The coach suggested something for focus. She'd almost agreed until attending this workshop. Now she understood the danger. She thanked me with tears, clutching my hands. I drove home thinking about Archie, about cycles broken and others prevented, about Mom out there somewhere, probably still performing grief for profit, about Dad's weakness and Aunt Linda's strength, about choosing who deserves your loyalty. That night, I made pasta with extra croutons, setting a place for memory. Not mourning anymore, but honoring. The brother who'd existed before pills and plots, who deserved protection we'd failed to provide, who lived on in every child I helped keep safe. The work would continue tomorrow and all the days after. Watching, protecting, remembering, building something worthwhile from ruins, proving that love could triumph over greed, even when justice came not from courts but from choosing to break cycles, save others, honor the dead by protecting the living.